folks, Dr. Pulsifer here in what may be an almost too bright setting, but it's one of those days here in north central Florida. And I have a comparison to make. I was thinking about the Empire in Star Wars and what was closest to the Empire in the modern world. And of course, it's Russia. Aggressive, doesn't care about anybody, and so forth. But what I want to highlight is the poor equipment in both the Empire and Russia. In particular, think about the armor of stormtroopers in Star Wars. Have you ever seen a stormtrooper have his armor help him in any way, shape, or form? Does it resist fire? No. Does it have shots glance off it the way shots glance off the Mandalorian's Beskar armor? No. Does it protect them from smoke? No. Does it have breathing apparatus? No. Is detection gear built in? No. It's actually a waste of time in function. All it does is identify people, but it also hides people who want to pretend to be stormtroopers. They put on stormtrooper armor, and that's that. Well, compare that with the Russians, whose equipment has done very poorly in the war with Ukraine, and that's a big reason why the Ukrainians are still there and in fact seem to be have the upper hand at this point, because they have been gradually getting better equipment. Now there's a lot more to that. There's the Ukrainians are much more motivated to defend their country than the Russians are to invade a country with no reason. But equipment is a lot of it. Now, I suppose that in a war game, you would have to reflect the differences in equipment. Now, that tends to be simple in war games because if you have strength factors, you just give a lower strength factor. It's kind of like the Italian units in Africa Corps or other games. The Italians were not particularly motivated, they didn't have particularly good equipment, and so they get a lower strength score. But it's not usually set as something that's separate and obvious. It's just built into the whole thing. Now, if you go down to a very low tactical level, then you can indeed have equipment that doesn't function as well, especially, for example, tanks. If one tank is better than another and you're having individual tanks fight one another, then you can give lower values to the tanks that don't fight as well. But the typical in a war game is to build it all into one number. And that makes it easier for the designer. Thanks for listening.